What's up guys, Tom from the Airsoft Headquarters here, and welcome back to the channel. I welcome you with a very bad quarantine haircut, as well as a product that I have been wanting to do for a while now. In fact, this has probably been in the process, or at least somewhere on a shelf in the last year. But if you remember, a while ago actually, I did a gameplay overview of the HK MP5 Elite, and I thought it was about time that I actually did a review video about this product. I've actually been trying to wait until I was able to get back into the store in our normal studio. Doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon, so here we go. So yeah, this is the Elite Force HK MP5 A4, the Elite series. Now Elite Force has been producing MP5s for a couple of years now. They have their competition series, which is going to be a lower end price point, and then they have their Elite series, which is going to be a much higher price point. I'm talking $180 for the competition model, still a very good beginner-based platform if you want to get into indoor. And then we have the Elite series. Now these are going to be way better off as far as external and internal construction, and that's why they're sitting at the $350 price point. Now there is another one of the Elite series, and that is going to be the MP5 A5, excuse me. And that is going to be a much larger handguard, and it's going to have a telescoping stock, unlike this one, the A4, which has a full-size stock. So that is going to be the difference between the two. This one is also my personal rifle, so I did change the regular handguard out for a Midwest Industries M-Lock rail system on here, and I will go over that in a minute. So when you first pick this rifle up, you're going to notice that it has a decent amount of heft. Even though it is a PDW or an SMG, it's got quite a bit of weight to it, and that is thanks to the all-metal upper receiver here that goes from the very top here down into the mag wall. The lower receiver is a high-strength polymer. The stock here is going to be all polymer as well. The handguard here would be polymer, but I did change that out again. So really it doesn't add that much more weight. This handguard was actually fairly lightweight, so I felt that it stayed the same. But overall, it's pretty heavy. It's a really solid rifle all around. Starting kind of up towards the tip here, we do have the USA mandatory orange tip, which is going to have at the very tip a 14 counterclockwise threading, and that's going to be pretty, in this case, it was painted on there pretty thickly. You can see there's a little bit of flashing here from putting a suppressor or a tracer unit on here, so that paint did come off just a little bit. Underneath that is going to be a 3-lug locking mechanism if you do want to get the Mad Bull Gemtech tracer unit. That is going to be a quick detach for quick attach on and quick detach for removing it. I think some of the more recent models of the Mad Bull Gemtechs are going to have the Ace Tech Lighter S automatically installed in there. So you do get a pretty cool tracer unit and a pretty cool looking suppressor. So pretty cool that they have that. Like I said before, I did have the triangular polymer handguard, which was all just kind of loosey-goosey on there. Not really loose, it was still really solid, but I wanted something that was even more solid. And I especially wanted something that is going to allow for any foregrips, flashlights, or down here I would run my rifle camera. Now this is the Midwest Industries rail system. Now I did realize kind of in the initial purchase, I knew that the Elite series was much closer to the real spec of the real HK MP5. And so in my head, I was like, well, I wonder if the M-Lock rail system is actually going to fit better on there, because I really didn't like any of the options aftermarket for just a handguard that had some rails on there. It didn't look good and it really didn't fit the function that I wanted. So I actually took this down the road to the Midwest Industries retail space, and I walked in, of course, in a carry bag, and I said, could you possibly fit one of the real rails on here for me, please? And they said, sure, let me just go in back and I'll throw it on there. And a couple minutes later, it's on there, and I've had this on here for about a year now, and with foregrips, it actually adds more torque the further down you go. Of course, that's how physics work. And so as I'm cranking on here, there's no movement. There's zero wobble. Even after a year of trying to crank on it, it is absolutely solid, and I love that. So if you want something that is absolutely streamlined, it has quick detach on the sides here for any sort of sling mounts. You have an excellent option from Midwest Industries, and you can order that online, or if you're close enough in the Waukesha area, you can just go to their retail space and they'll install it for you. So a huge shout out to them. I really enjoy it, really love it. Further down, of course, I talked about the all-metal upper receiver up in the handguard as well. What is really interesting is that, of course, we have the somewhat ambidextrous magazine release. It's just the switch back here, so with my left hand I can hit that, or if you are left-handed, you would be pulling the magazine out with your right hand. You can do that no issue. However, if you look on the side here, there is actually a magazine release button. So if you're right-handed and if you got really long fingers, I have to actually take my hand off the grip just a little bit. You can hit that magazine release button and it works. It's a little bit better if you are left-handed, so you can take your thumb, hit that magazine release. If you're not a fan of going down here, you can do that. Otherwise, right-handed, you can put your pointer finger up on that magazine release. It's a little awkward. I'm not exactly sure why they put that magazine release up there, since we just have the tab down here, but it's a cool function. I never really use it, but it's overall very, very cool. On the lower receiver, of course, we have the traditional selector switch with the white safety, the single red bullet for semi-auto, and then the 7 red bullets for full auto. It doesn't mean it's burst, it's full auto. I know with the real MP5 A4 there would be a 3-round burst selection, but we don't really need it in Airsoft. Sorry, it's just not necessary. But what's really cool is that even after a year of use, that selector switch is still really solid. Certain other brands aftermarket, after you start to wear them in, that selector starts to get pretty sloppy. But even if I'm not playing, I'll just go down into the basement, work on my magazine releases, and of course, I'm in safe, put my magazine in, beep, hit semi, do a couple shots, back to safe, and I just do that repeatedly. And after a year of just putzing around with it or using it in game, the fact that that switch is still crisp and solid, I love it. It also, because of how crisp it is and the fact that it stays solid, if you do need to do a quick switch over into semi or full auto, if you have those specific types of games, you know that you're going to that selection really quickly. You don't have to worry about hitting that selector really fast and over rotating it into full auto and lighting someone up by accident. Up at the very top here, we do have claw mounts on the very top of the receiver. That is how you mount rail systems for the MP5 specifically. Now, Elite Force does have these rail systems for the very top for mounting your optics. Aftermarket, you can get them from a third-party manufacturer. I think I saw them on eBay. You can also get them on HK Parts, I believe, if I remember correctly, which are Picatinny rail systems that go all the way forward to sit right behind the front sight block there. So you have all this extra room for another laser or maybe a PEC box. Maybe you want to put your optic somewhat forward a little bit more. Maybe you're running super magnified optic and you need 2 points to connect that scope onto. So you have that option aftermarket as well. On the left side here of the receiver, you do have this quick little, or not quick little, you do have this little tab here, this weird flat hook. And what this is, and it did take a little bit of digging, is that for the guys over in the 80s, they would use this to hook onto their gear if they were in parade rest, or if they're sitting on standby instead of using, they still had their slings on, but just for keeping it a little bit closer to the chest, they just hung it on a pocket or something. That's how I understand this is. Just so you guys are aware, it did take me a while to find that. From there, of course, we go back to the stock here. Now, of course, you probably have figured out by now that the battery compartment is going to be back here inside of the stock. Now, what the issue is that to get to your battery space, what is instructed in the manual is to pop that stock pin and pull the stock off, put your battery on, and then maneuver the battery and the wire system back into the stock, and then put that pin back in. Of course, over time, that has gotten very, very loose, the stock pin at least, so it is very, very close to just popping out on me. It's super easy for that to pop out, so it does wear in. Please take note of that. What I instead have decided to do is I have this tape. What I did is I took a hammer, the very back lip of the pad here, I just hammered until the very back retention pin broke on here, and now I can have fairly easy access to my battery compartment without having to take that pin out. So without having to worry about the wires either, I can just slide my battery in, connect it, put the tab back on, but then I do have to rewrap it with my tape, which of course you should have extra electrical tape on your person. It's always, always handy. Now the reason why I would use tape, actually, I'll quick show that, is that if you're aiming down sights and you want to maneuver the rifle downward, of course it's not going to do it now. There we go. That pad slides downwards and can come off. So we do it again. There we go. It kind of just hooks underneath that armpit or any spare clothing, and it just rides off, and it's just very easy to pull off. So having some tape to wrap around here, of course, if you plan on playing for several hours, it's really not that huge of an inconvenience. In fact, I'm still rocking the original electrical tape from when I first broke this. Intentionally broke that pad off. So you can make the tape last a fairly long time. It doesn't look too bad, I think. If we don't have direct light on here, that black tape tends to blend in with the stock much, much better. That's really it as far as the externals. Internally, this is going to have a Avalon gearbox. Now, the big thing about Avalon gearboxes is that we at the Airsoft Headquarters absolutely love those gearboxes. The Avalons are a M4 lineup that are coming from Elite Force. That's, in our opinion, the highest end rifle that you can get the best performance, stock, out of the box. In our experience of selling well over 100 of the Avalon spec internals, whether that be the M4s, the 416s, or the MP5s, we have only ever had 2 come back for a manufacturer defect. And I mean a manufacturer defect as in something is catastrophic, something doesn't work directly out of the box. Now, if you do the math, out of, I think it was 130, 2 come back, that's less than a 1% defect rate, okay? That is the best standards that you can find on the airsoft market. I mean, the best standards. So if that doesn't already tell you the amount of quality control that Elite Force has, or the amount of performance that comes out of the Avalon gearboxes, then I don't know what to tell you. With the Avalon internals here, I prefer to leave them stock as is. I have not done anything internally except for change that battery connector. So, starting from the top, in order to get to the hop-up unit, you're going to pull your charging handle back and upwards to reveal a little arm that you can slide back and forth, and that is going to make adjustments to the bucking onto the top of the BB that sits inside of the hop-up unit in order to give it more or less backspin in order to travel through the air more consistently for farther. Now, in order to put that charging handle back down, with an open hand, you are going to pull back, down, and guide it forward like so. One point of conversation is the HK slap, such as you're going down like this and just letting it rock forward. I don't even want to do the HK slap because even on real MP5s, that charging handle will break. Even though this is a steel neck, in order to allow you to HK slap it, that's really not something that is practiced even in real military. They still are practicing down and forward. In fact, look at Garantham's video. he specifically says do not HK slap. Instead, do an open palm down and forward, because it's just a waste of movement, especially in airsoft when you don't need to do that mechanic. So one unique thing about the Avalon gearboxes as well is going to be the fact that it has a quick change spring system. Now, this is not a true quick change spring system. Instead, you will need a Phillips screwdriver. I'm going to put this down. You will need to get a Phillips screwdriver, take out the very screw back here, which holds the spring guide in place. There is also a screw down at the bottom here, which locks the upper receiver to the lower receiver. So take those two screws out, pull this bridge out of place, and that is going to reveal your rotating spring guide in order to change your internal spring, which changes the velocity. Now, out of the box, this is going to be shooting 380 feet per second. You can change that spring in order to get a higher velocity, or in my case, you change the spring in order to get a lower velocity. Since this is a SMG, a submachine gun, or a PDW, personal defense weapon, it's much more compact, lower profile. It's ideal for indoor environments. So that's why I went with the lower velocity, so I can play indoors with it. And it's really just as simple as getting a Allen screw, rotating that spring guide out of place, and just it pops out. Pretty easy reverse order of operations as well. Stock onto the back of the receiver, stock body pin back in place, and then it's all back together. Now, the magazine that would come with the MP5 in the box is going to be what is called a high cap magazine. A high cap refers to a magazine that has a larger chamber of BBs. It traditionally has a wheel on the bottom, which you need to rotate in order to get the BBs from the larger reservoir into a single file line that has tension in order to feed into the gun itself. This holds 300 rounds. I personally do not run mid or high caps, so I only run mid caps. This is a metal construction magazine, so it's very, very solid, very durable. However, for me personally, I run a mid cap. Now, this is going to be a polymer construction, but what is special about mid caps is that even though they hold fewer rounds, this one holds 120, it holds all of the BBs in a single file line already, so it just automatically feeds the BBs into the gun without any issue. I don't have to worry about a wheel. I don't have to worry about checking if I have any more in there. Another thing that I want to talk about is going to be the sling options. Now, for the handguard that would come with it, the triangular one, this loop up here is going to be the only option as far as a sling point. Of course, you do have back here the wide sling mount, which you would need to weave the sling into. For this, I use a LBX 2-point. I just took one of the brackets off, or one of the hooks, and just wove the sling into. So if I want to use that loop up front there, I just take the second point that has the hook and I slide it into place like so. So now I have a 2-point, and I would wear it like so. Up over the shoulder, coming down underneath my left arm, and I can fire pretty confidently from the left arm. Because of the way that the stock is set up here, it's a little bit more troublesome if I'm left-handed and trying to fire from a left shoulder. What I do, because I do train to transition shoulders pretty effectively, I run the hook point back where that stock sling plate is, and now I have a 2-point that is modified as a 1-point. And in fact, there is a little bit more length here, so it dangles a little bit farther down than what is considered standard. But this is airsoft, it really doesn't matter. So now, even though I'm right-handed, I have no issue shooting right-handed, and if I need to transition shoulders, there is enough length around my shoulder here in order to get the rifle over to my left side. Pretty easy to go right and then back to left, versus having to do a 2-point, a little bit more troublesome, and it's much tighter. So that is how I do it. So for aftermarket upgrades, there really is not a whole lot available that is strictly unique. Of course, I do have the handguard up here, which I've mentioned, the optic rail clamps that I have mentioned before as well. The stock options, I should comment that because this is closer to real spec, you do have to be considerate as far as what type of attachments you purchase for aftermarket upgrades or customization, such as most airsoft spec of aftermarket stocks may not fit on here. So that's why I run just these standard. Of course, you can modify, such as a retractable, in order to have a larger battery space, so you can run a battery in the retractable space. However, for ease of use, I just keep the large stock here. The Avalon Gearbox that sits inside of here is going to be really, really good in my opinion. So, but of course you do have options for all version 2 gearboxes for upgrades or aftermarket options that you would want to drop into here. The upper receivers, the lower receiver as well, nothing aftermarket, no aftermarket barrels either. So what you get really is kind of what you get. Other than that, it's all going to be mostly cosmetic as far as stock or the handguard. One final note for me is that I went with the full stock because the way that it's set up, it already has a dip in the back here. So I don't have to get a riser for my optic because of how the stock is built. I run a full face mask, so that has extra material here. But when I go to aim down sights, I have no issue looking down through my optic because the stock here is built further downward versus an M4, which is going to be in alignment to the barrel back here, is going to be much higher up, and thus I need to get a riser for an M4. For this MP5, that's not the case, so I can run it to look much more lower profile. The only thing that you would need to be considerate of is that the front block, the front iron sight, is going to show up inside of your optic. For me, it doesn't really matter because I run both eyes open, so using that parallax, I just kind of see through it. So that's really not an issue for me personally. For you, that may be something you need to take into consideration if you're looking at this specific rifle or anything aftermarket. So overall, this is a really, really good gun. And this is one that I have a lot of pride in. And this is one of my top 3 for personal rifles. So I'm a huge fan of it. I think you guys will be as well. If you do want to check out the MP5A5, that can be, I can throw a picture up really, really quick. It's going to have the same internals, the same basic externals, except for a retractable stock and a larger handguard to fit that battery in. Other than that, internally, it's all going to be the exact same spec. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review video. If you have any further questions, put them down in the comment section below. If you guys like this, go ahead and hit that like button. Please consider subscribing. Other than that, I will see you in the next one. So take care, stay safe, stay clean, and I'll see you later. Bye.